Hello friends! Today I wanted to watch a video with you guys. It was actually sent to me by the creator themselves. His name is 𝗬𝗂𝐻𝐵𝑎𝑠A. He's a journalist / reporter in Japan, and I've actually made a video before about his work, specifically the one where he talks about autistic adults in Japan. A few months ago, he actually sent me another piece he made where he goes into the experience of an autistic woman who moved to Japan. I'm not really sure what this video is going to consist of, but I thought that it would be interesting for us to witness the unique experience of this autistic woman. It's probably going to drum up a lot of pretty interesting conversations as well. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. All right, I'm gonna put my headphones on.
I've got so many kind of message from the viewers, and I'm really glad to see that. But some people point out there's not any foreigner's perspective on that. So actually today, I came here and about to meet a woman who moved to Japan from Dutch and publishing a book about it. So I think she would be the best person to interview. So let's go meet her and find out.
Okay, so an autistic Dutch woman moved to Japan, wrote a book about her experience. What country are Dutch people from? I think that's, the Netherlands. Okay, Dutch people are from the Netherlands. That is a country in Europe, for those of you who may not know. I'm sorry to my Dutch audience members. I'm learning.
So my name is Bianca and Japan. I'm from the Netherlands and I've been living in Japan since 2 years. And I make websites and I have my books and sometimes I take pictures. I am business manager and it's like the startup visa. For that, you have to have an office. You at some point need to hire employees. You cannot get a visa for freelancing. You can get a visa for business manager, which is a bit more complicated than that. You're trying to get a bank account, trying to get a phone, trying to get literally trying to get everything working. And it would be like, no, you can't have a bank account because you don't have a phone number. Oh, you can't have a phone number because you don't have a bank account. What do you want? But now, at this point, I feel like I am finally there.
So it seems like she's an entrepreneur, kind of like I am, and a lot of autistic people end up becoming our own bosses and creating our own businesses. If not business, we find multiple ways to make income because that is somewhat easier and more manageable than going out and working for a corporation. It's not easy, I will say that. It's not easy being your own manager and making sure you're constantly keeping track of all of your revenue, making sure that you're making enough money to support yourself and to pay your bills and whatnot. But you at least have freedom to manage yourself, if that makes sense. And that's the difference. It's a matter of, do you put that brain power into building out your own life and your own work schedule? Or do you let someone else decide that for you? Yes, that doesn't require brain power, but it may not be able to account for other aspects of yourself and your autistic needs. And so that becomes draining. Because for me, I have a certain amount of workload that I delegate to myself, right? And I have to complete. Because I am my own boss, I could really tune into myself day in and day out to see how much work I'm able to do. Let's say one day I'm having a really hard time, my chronic pain is really bad, or I'm just not really doing well emotionally and I have to really take care of myself. I could choose to take a break from work and tend to those needs, but that means that the days after that, I probably have to put extra time and effort into completing that workload. You see what I'm saying? How one isn't necessarily objectively less work than the other, but how it's able to accommodate your autistic needs and the sustainability of that work career life may be completely different than if you and your life were left up to other people's decisions.
Well, I was always a strange kid. When I was 4 years old, they put me in school and that went so badly that they already had to put me in another school after 6 months or so. I wanted to write and they said, no, you're too young to write. You can only learn to write next year or 2 years later. And I was like, no, I want to write. I can already write. And then the teacher was like, no, you write wrong. And then I got home and I got really angry at my parents. They were like, okay, this is a problem. We have to do something. So they moved me to another school. I didn't have an autism diagnosis until 26. But when you look back, you can see even then at 4 years old, there were issues. Actually, in primary school, everything was going pretty well. I was on a Montessori school. There's cubes and then you could...
Lucky. Girly is lucky. She was in a Montessori school. I've been researching here and there different school systems available to people because I feel like our regular public school systems in America, at least, is so not suitable for neurodivergent folks. Montessori schools is something that I feel like is a lot more suitable for our needs. But then again, Montessori school is so freaking expensive and most people are not going to be able to afford it. I'm not sure what that is like in the Netherlands. So if any of my viewers here are from the Netherlands, maybe you could shed some light for us and educate us on how many different school systems are available to you guys, and are Montessori schools in the Netherlands also really, really expensive?
You can build with them, but you can also use them for mathematics, and it's super interesting. And I was like this kid who wanted to learn. I was like, everything is interesting, I want to learn. So that was fine. Until I went to high school. That's where the bullying started. The other kids thought I was weird. I think they were right about that. I was weird. I was just very enthusiastic to learn things, and I was correcting mistakes.
I think it's so interesting to know that no matter what gender you are, what age, what country you live in, whatever it is, you will always be seen as different and weird so long as you don't fit the social norm that is existing in that space that you're in. And there's always going to be social norms. I think that is such an interesting concept. I wonder how that works when you are in countries where there is a more homogenous culture, if that makes sense. So I imagine living in the Netherlands and living in Japan, there's a very specific social norm. It's weird because when you're in America, there are so many different subcultures that creates different social norms. So the social norm here in California is going to be completely different than the social norm in New York or in Oklahoma, Mississippi, Louisiana, things like that. Even then, there's going to be different social norms for different cities within the different states and within different ethnical groups, different age groups, because at least here in California, you have people of my parents' generation, and a lot of the times that consists of not only boomers, but they're also immigrants, right? And then within the millennial generation, you get a lot of first generation Americans who are raised by immigrants, but also brought up in American culture. And so that creates its own little subgroup that has a bunch of different social norms. And then you get a bunch of people that come from different immigrant families that immigrated from all different parts of the world. And that culture creates another subculture. And I think that's the confusing part of being an autistic person in America, at least. I think something that we discovered in the last video that I watched with you guys that 𝗬𝗏 made is that there's like a very specific norm in Japan, and there's this pressure that you can't exist outside of it without feeling extremely judged and maybe even alienated, sometimes maybe even targeted. I wonder what that social norm is in the Netherlands, you know?
And sometimes I would even laugh, but not because I was laughing at them. Sometimes it's like funny. Like I remember one time we were in like economics, and one girl, she made a mistake, and in the mistake was like she added her costs to her profit. And I was like, that's so funny. Yeah, that's a nice way to creatively up your results. And she was like, what, were you laughing at me? And I was like, no, it's just funny. No, they didn't think it was funny.
I resonate with that as well. I don't usually laugh when people make jokes. I usually laugh as a response to me processing what's happening. Does that make sense? And I feel like that is a really key misunderstanding that people oftentimes have of autistic folks who do stuff like that, where they laugh in situations and then others perceive it as it being inappropriate or we're laughing at them. Because I feel like neurotypical people tend to think that everything you're doing is a response to them or is a direct insinuation at them, and they're trying to interpret what you're trying to say to them, even though you're never really truly doing anything for the purpose of them interpreting the underlying meaning. Usually you're just responding to life, and it's really that simple. Because so many times I find myself in that exact same situation where I chuckle at something, or I don't even realize sometimes when I'm smiling in a response to me observing what's going on around me. Sometimes I'm just thinking about something and I'm just smiling to myself or laughing to myself. And then if someone is with me, they'll say, oh, why are you laughing? Did I say something? Did I do something? And I'm kind of like brought out of my thought and I'm like, wait, what? No, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just processing something, you know? I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who hear that story that she just told and say, that's BS. Like, she was being an asshole to that other girl and laughing at her basically and making her feel bad about herself. But I genuinely believe what she's saying. I genuinely believe that she was processing the actual methodology or the mistake itself and just chuckling at how ironic it is or how silly it is, or just being simply entertained by it. She's not insinuating that the person is stupid or that the person should have known better. She's just laughing at the thing itself. But humans aren't socialized to take things at face value. They're socialized to always interpret the underlying meaning. She's laughing at my mistake, therefore she thinks I'm dumb. When in reality, autistics usually are just laughing at that thing in and of itself, outside of passing judgment on the person.
Like at one point there was, at 1 year there was one girl, she was sitting next to me the whole year. After a while we became friends. So after a while I was gonna write something in her like agenda. But then I saw that the things the other girls were writing to her, they wrote like, oh, poor you have to sit next to it, oh, I feel so sad for you. They called me it. You shouldn't talk to it, and it is crazy, and ignore her. And the guys would always like bully me because I was very young.
When she said that other kids called her it, that gave me chills throughout my whole body, because I don't know, I'm empathizing with her, and that's really, really messed up. It makes me want to cry, because that must have hurt a lot, you know, and that sucks. If I could say anything on the behalf of those kids, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, you know, that's not okay. I don't know if she's gonna ever watch this video, but if she does, I'm so sorry that you went through that. You didn't deserve it. You are a person. You are someone to be valued and to be witnessed. You are not an it. Whew. Just letting the emotions kind of run its course out of me.
I went to high school 1 year early because I was already finished with like primary school. They when I was younger, they tested me and they said I was gifted. I don't think I have really a talent. I mean, I know I'm not stupid. I mean, I can build websites, and I used to be good at like math. Like I finished high school, but in order to finish it, I got an eating disorder to get me through the day, basically. So I just became obsessed with food and what should I eat, what should I not eat, and blah, blah, blah. After high school, I got into therapy. So I've been in therapy for a year. Even there, they didn't diagnose.
I feel like disordered eating or eating disorders is also really common when you're autistic, because I think there could be emotional components, and I think there could be a lot of objective components. I feel like either way, when you're autistic, there's always an objective component as to why you develop disordered eating or eating disorders. But I think being a human, it naturally does add emotions to it as well. So I struggled with eating disorders for many years of my life. I talk about it on my channel, so I'm not going to get too much into it here, but it's just so interesting that it's such a universal experience that autistic folks have such a complex relationship with food specifically.
My autism yet, but they did say like my social skills were very bad. You're not very good in social skills. Maybe you should do some class on social skills. And I was like, no, I refused, because I was like, you're gonna put me in this class and torture me with like try to teach me social skills, and I know I will never be able to do it. I'm very bad at making eye contact, for example. I know in Japan it's different. In Japan you make less eye contact anyway, but in Europe they consider it really rude if you don't do that. I already knew that I would hate the class. It would be super stressful for me. And I was like, I will never learn this. I don't think I was right, actually, because I did get better at social skills in the end. When I was like 20 years old, I was terrified to make.
That's true. I feel like in a lot of Asian cultures, socialization norms aren't the same. It's not necessarily socially acceptable to come talk to a stranger and interrupt what they're doing to socialize with them. It's not necessarily the social norm to say hi to everyone on the street or to make eye contact with them and things like that. Because a big aspect of some Asian cultures is the idea of respect and giving someone space as an indication that you're respecting them. As an autistic person, I find comfort in that because I don't feel the pressure if I'm in certain Asian spaces to have to come across very friendly, to make eye contact and to have back and forth conversation, small talk, things like that. An example is if I go to Chinese restaurants where it's like the OG Chinese people, hole in the wall, all that kind of stuff, there is no niceties about it. They come, they don't smile at you, they don't really make eye contact, they don't really say anything or greet you, they just throw the menu on the table and they walk away. And it's just very straightforward. You order your food when it's ready, they bring you the food, you eat, pay, you leave. There's not this pressure to like have to come across as so nice and friendly. And I think there's people who misunderstand that sort of exchange and they think Chinese people are cold or rude and things like that, but it's really not the case. They usually give you really, really good service. It's just they're not looking to pander to you. You know what I'm saying? Like my water will be refilled without me needing to ask, but they're not gonna try to smile at me or ask me if I'm doing okay and things like that. And it's like weirdly therapeutic to have a space like that where the norm isn't to have to please each other in these like social ways. And so I could see how she going to Japan feels a little bit more of a relief because of those little different social norms where she doesn't have to make eye contact like she does in Europe and things like that. Because you know, making eye contact as a neurodivergent person is difficult because you have so much you're processing all the time. And if you're not able to move your eyes around and whatnot, you're having a harder time to process. This is the exact reason why EMDR is so helpful for certain types of people, because eye movement is a thing. Eye movement is directly correlated to our brains and how we're processing things. And if we're just maintaining eye contact the whole time, there's going to be other parts of our processing that we're not able to access, you know?
Phone call. Then I was so stupid to take jobs where you have to make phone calls. I worked in a call center.
Why?
Because I felt like I have to be able to do it. Everyone can do this. I should be able to do this. But at the same time, I was really, really terrified.
Oh my God. I feel like that's such a common experience as a late diagnosed autistic to, at least at some point in your life, put yourself in a situation or get a job that forces you to practice something that you don't like and are not good at. So she worked in a call center to get herself to talk. I got a job as a waitress to teach myself how to socialize. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because a job has a lot of rules. It has a lot of scripts that you follow. It has a process to it. It's a system. And so when you get a job that forces you to socialize in some sort of capacity, but you do it in the confines of rules and systems, it makes it somewhat easier to navigate. And I think as an undiagnosed autistic person, you're looking for that sort of neat chaos type of situation to teach you how to exist properly. And I'm not saying that experience is necessarily all bad. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we learn from it, but again, it's just one of those tools that we try to use. And whether or not it's effective for us, it depends on the person. But I think regardless, it is tiring. It is tiring to put yourself in a situation that's not necessarily natural to you.
Point I was like writing on my blog, like I have a personal little blog, and I was just writing like, why am I always like this? My head is really full with something. Sometimes it helps to just write it out. And one of my friends, she sent me an article of a magazine, and it was about autism in women. and how it looks different from autism in men sometimes, because men can be more like outward and women can be more like they take it all inside themselves and they get like anxiety or eating disorders. So I was reading that and I was like, oh, that sounds like me. So then I went to the doctor. That's how at 26 I finally got my diagnosis. First I was like, oh great, now I have autism, I will just order some books and I will read the books and I will just fix it. Well, that didn't work, of course. Then I was quite sad because it cannot get better. So I cannot be like cured or something. So I was like, oh, my whole life will be miserable. And since when I got my diagnosis, at first I kept it quiet for a little while, but then I felt like I couldn't write anything anymore because I was like lying. So after a while, I started to write blog posts about like autism, and
that's so true. I think a lot of it has to do with how autistic brains work. Because we are such monotropic people, everything is connected to each other. And so when there's one core aspect of our lives that changes completely, it is connected to all of these other parts of our life, and we can't exist in those systems anymore and with those scripts when the core part is different. And so what happens when you're diagnosed or when you have new information, period, about something, you have to go back and recalibrate everything that it's connected to. And a lot of the times, if you're autistic, everything is connected. Everything is. My job isn't just my job. My job is connected to me. It's connected to my personal life. It's connected to my friendships. It's connected to my schedule, my eating, everything, right? And so if my job were to change, everything else has to change. If her knowledge of herself and her diagnosis impacts the way that she's able to process her life, everything else is going to have to change. And I think a lot of the times people who get diagnosed later, they hit that crossroads where they realize I can't keep doing things the way that I have been, because now I have information that fundamentally changes how I process things, let alone how I approach it. And that whole recalibration period takes time, and it's okay. It probably will take many years. The first few months of it is probably going to be very overwhelming, and your brain's going to hurt because you're processing so much, but it's worth it. And it does get easier. It does get more manageable. Like she said, autism isn't something you cure. It's just something you continually learn how to understand. Our job is to take whatever information we're continually learning and figure out how to go back and recalibrate our life to fit ourselves better. And that's where the healing comes in, because life isn't always going to be only about suffering. There are things that we can do. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It is going to be a struggle. We don't really have much available to us, but there are still things that we could do, and there are still more and more things being put out there for us to more easily access. It's just a matter of delegating your energy appropriately to the right things that will actually benefit you, rather than kind of just floating around life ambiguously struggling and not knowing what to do about it.
Popular. So then I got approached by a publisher who asked me if I could write. This first one, they wanted me to write the book how they had it in mind. We didn't really agree. So I was like, okay, never mind, I will not write a book. And then my friend was like, no, you have to write a book. It's going to be so good. I know somebody else who is also a publisher. Maybe you can go, I can bring you into contact. Eventually it turns out it was really great, and this is the publisher I'm with now, and I'm really happy. People have this stereotype ideas from movies and stuff. You know, you can count real quick, like they say, okay, 5 October 2004, and you say, oh, that was a Wednesday. Or they, you know, and there's some people who can do that, but usually it's not like that. Or they think you're just like super like dense and you cannot handle any, like, you know, if something changes, you will just start throwing things around, and like people can be like that, but usually it's not that. Since I was like 8 years old, I was obsessed with Disney parks. So in 2008, one of my friends, she was a model, I took photos of her, and she went to Japan for 2 months. She asked me if I wanted to come, and I could just stay with her just in her house, so I didn't have to pay anything, just a flight. I didn't know anything about Japan. I just knew there was Disneyland. And I will go and see Disneyland because I wanted to see all the Disneylands in the world. And then I just saw Japan, you know, I was like, whoa, this country is amazing. Like, the culture is different, and I really liked it. When I'm in the Netherlands, like when I travel with the train, people are super loud. Sometimes I pay for like a business class seat and have my more like peace and quiet.
You have to buy that.
Yeah.
Quiet.
I agree with her. As someone that lives outside of Japan, I love Japan. And I'm not trying to invalidate the experiences of Japanese folks or autistic folks who live in Japan and things like that. I'm sure there's a lot of struggle there and a lot of nuances there that we're not aware of as people who don't live there and grew up there. As an outsider, at least, dealing with going from America to Japan, anytime I'm in Japan, there's this immediate relief I feel because it's just so organized and there's all these little details of how society is there that is different in a positive way. People aren't just shouting and being really loud in the trains or even in the streets. That's definitely something else that I noticed when I was in Japan. When I was walking around the streets, it's so quiet that I could hear the footsteps of people. That is just so different from here in America. People here are so painfully loud and it's just different, you know? And the systems in Japan in general, even like how 7-Eleven is, how the train system is, it's so much easier to navigate because it all interconnects in a way that makes sense. And I feel like in America, it's just not like that, you know? Not like that at all. So I agree with her.
Yeah, exactly. But I do that a lot. When I was still in the Netherlands, I had like a first class train pass. It's not necessary here. People are just quiet and just nice and they sit and I was like, wow, this country is amazing. After a while, like I went back a lot. Like before I lived here, when I went to 3 months, I always felt so calm coming here. Or just like I came here with like a lot of work, very stressed, like and then I was just in Japan and I just calmed down. So it kept in my head, it was like, actually I want to work in Japan, you know, I want to live here and do my job. I always thought that the only way is to become an English teacher. I was pretty sure I didn't want to become an English teacher. It would be so much contact. So I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. And then I found this business manager, like the startup thing. This is exactly what I need. This is it. So I contacted a company who helps, because of course I cannot do that by myself. I focused a lot of time on this application and it got approved. So I was really happy. First of all, like, I know it's not fair because if you're like Japanese and you're autistic, people expect you to know the rules, you know, all the unwritten rules. But if you're a foreigner like me, I don't say I'm deliberately not following the rules, but if I misunderstand, people will be super understanding towards me.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, she did point out a nuance there. How if you're an autistic Japanese person, there's less understanding and forgiveness towards your deficits and autistic needs. But if you're a foreigner, there's automatically this forgiveness that, oh, this person's just ignorant, they don't know any better. Yes, okay, that makes so much sense. Mm-hmm.
Because they think, okay, she's a foreigner, of course she doesn't understand. It feels
That
kind of
waffle
like
looks
I'm
so good.
undercover as an autistic, like that. So, because they always think it's just because I'm just a foreigner. Sometimes I see shop staff and they, as a Westerner, they come across as super nervous. Like, you know, it's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, calm down. But for me, it's great because I can be like that too, but it's accepted. Sometimes in the Netherlands, like if people don't know Japan, they just know like they have seen Shibuya on TV or Shinjuku and they're like, Japan is super crowded. No, if I'm just like here in Hachioji, it's just quiet. Here in Japan also a lot of things are explained quite well. Everywhere there's like information, there's a lot of like stand here, go there, do this.
Yes, she's literally saying what I said earlier. It's so easy to navigate things in Japan because there's instructions for everything and there's visual aids. It's so helpful. I don't think people in Japan understand that when you go to other countries, it's not like that at all. And little things like that really does make it so much easier as an autistic person to navigate the world around you. And it allows you to have better access to be an independent person because of it.
Very clearly where you should stand. A lot of times there's like on the floor is like stand here. Perfect. Because
the instructions are so specific and I love it. I remember even using the public restrooms in Japan, they have images of diagrams on how to properly sit on a toilet, and they even showed you like little graphic images of the incorrect ways to sit on a toilet. And I remember that was something that I would giggle about, because it's like, you would think people would know how to sit on a toilet, but also the autistic part of me is like, yes, I enjoy these specific instructions. I enjoy you guys making sure that I will do the right thing in the right way, and that there's something right here for me to reference to. It's so helpful.
Myself, I would be like, where should I stand? I don't know. Always on the wrong place. Here's there you stand. Okay. Well, I can have days just feel so stressful, but I have this this help mark on my back. One day I was like really overwhelmed in the train and like feeling really bad and stressed, and then somebody I didn't ask, he just saw me and he pointed like tick tick and he gave his seat because I had the help mark. So I was almost crying because they were so sweet. Like, oh, thank you. People always think, wow, you live so small. Dutch people, they were like, how can you live like that? It's fine. It has a lot of benefits. Like, it's cheap, it doesn't get a mess. If it is a mess, you can tidy it up really quickly. Even when I lived in the Netherlands, I had a kind of a one room. What I like in Japan compared to Netherlands is in Japan, people don't touch each other. Just your bow. Yeah. And in the Netherlands, if it's like a family or
yes. Yes, girl, I feel you. In America, it's like that too. People are so just in each other's spaces. That's one thing that to this day I feel insecure about, because it is the social norm to intrude on each other's spaces, touch each other. Even the way that we communicate is so intimate and like invasive sometimes. But that's the thing, people here see that as connecting and as intimacy. And so when you're not comfortable with that, so I'm not comfortable with people touching me and being in my space, if I am not reciprocating that, or if I don't want to do that, people think that I'm either not friendly or I'm trying not to connect with them. And so they take that as a sign to back off and not talk to me and things like that. But in reality, I want to have a connection with you. It's just, I want my personal space respected. And I come across this a lot, especially in my female friendships. I feel like just there's been so many times where my female friends will try to hold hands with me or cuddle with me and things like that. I'm just the type of person that's not comfortable with that. I like my personal space. I like not feeling like people are on me. I even have a hard time being physically affectionate with my romantic partners, because outside of stimming on each other, I don't really like to just be on each other, you know? Like, I don't like being on each other while we're sleeping or while we're watching TV and things like that. I like to have my own space because I start to get really claustrophobic and overwhelmed. This girl is so relatable.
This is our mother-in-law. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
French kiss.
Then it's confusing. It's like, okay, what do we do? Do we hand? Oh, do we kiss? And I'm not a fan of that. In Japan, I think it's rude if you smell really strongly. Like if you use a lot of perfume, it's like, nah, don't do that. But in the Netherlands, people would do that. So if you don't have to like kiss them like that, you're like in their perfume like that.
That's interesting, because I do know that in Japan, they don't like strong smells. That not only applies to people, but I think cleaning products as well, because from what I've learned in Japan, their cleaning products are also generally unscented too. And so even though it's really clean there, like the public restrooms, you could probably eat off the floor. They clean it in a way where you don't smell anything. So you don't smell that flowery, citrusy cleaning product like you do in America, at least. And I do notice that with certain types of cultures, people wear different varieties of heaviness when it comes to their perfumes and colognes. Like, I've noticed that Middle Eastern men here in the Bay Area tend to have really, really strong cologne. And I noticed that with Latina women, they tend to have really strong perfume. But yeah, that's another thing that is autism friendly in Japan.
I really don't like that. You know, in a restaurant, you have a table, you have just a button, and then stuff comes. We don't have that in the Netherlands. Me, as an autistic person, I'm not good at making eye contact. So there's a waiters running around the restaurant. You cannot be like, hello, because that's rude. So you have to be like, trying to catch their eye, like, hey. And then they come to your table. But, oh God, I hate that.
By the way, I heard the word going Dutch.
Oh, is it like you pay separately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that pretty common in Dutch?
Yeah, actually, yes. Yes. There's an app. It's called 𝗪cie. You can send someone a 𝗪cie, and that means like you ask money. So let's say we went for dinner, I paid, and then I can send you 𝗪cie for like, okay, I paid your dinner, it's 25 euros, and then they can use this to pay. So yeah, it could be, Dutch people can be like that, but it's also like a little bit stereotyped. Like, it's not like we all like that.
Yeah.
The one thing maybe I hate the most is that I have to pay.
I feel like that's common in America too, just Venmoing or Zelling, making sure that people are splitting just because things are so expensive here. So there's this understanding, at least with my generation. I'm sure older people have different expectations, but I feel like younger people tend to know, okay, we're all struggling here to pay our bills. Things are expensive. We want to see each other still, but we gotta pay for our own stuff. Either that or you have some sort of agreement on how you split, whether that means I get it now and you get it next time, whatever it is. But I will say in some Asian cultures, especially Chinese/Taiwanese cultures, paying for each other is the social norm and is the way that you show love, because we don't really show love through affection. We show love through like acts of service and paying for food and things like that. So people of my parents' generation who come from Taiwan and things like that, they will literally fight each other for the bill to pay for the food for everyone. Like, I've damn near seen some of these moms almost like punch each other in the faces to be like, I'm paying for the bill. I'm getting the bill. I'll pay for our food. That was a really sarcastic joke. Of course, they're not hurting each other. It's just like, it's such a sign of respect and love to be able to pay for people's food.
I cannot do my own taxes. You know, I have an accountant. Sometimes the language barrier for just very easy things, like, how do they call that thing? Where your electrical switches.
Yeah.
I had to get it replaced. Then they have to just call my Japanese friend, and she has to translate. So yeah, these things is like, every time you want to do something like that's easy, it becomes a huge thing. I'm having my lessons every Friday now. It's from like, it's a volunteer group from the city, which is really nice. And we can just practice or just have conversations. I used to be very scared of trying to talk, because you make mistakes, or you say something wrong, or the other person is like, I don't understand what the hell you're saying. Now, because I just do it a lot, I feel less scared. Japan has a long way to go, but it's getting better. I think there's quite a lot of people with ASD in Japan that are functioning quite okay. I don't think they will get their diagnosis as fast. I think if they hear it, they think of the more severe, like a child that needs like a lot of guidance and a lot of help, and not somebody who has a job. For me, my diagnosis was only when I was 20.
It seems like that's a misconception across multiple countries. So we confirm that it's a misconception here in America, Japan, Netherlands. I'm curious to know if you guys are from other countries that I didn't mention, if it's also a misconception there. Relatable. I mean, taxes are hard to do even if you know the language. Like, I have a hard time with taxes too. I need help with that all the time.
For other people, they will get it sooner, because if you don't have it, you're just hating on yourself, and that will give you like depression or anxiety or eating disorders or all the other things you can get.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, so we finished the video. It was pretty good length. I really liked that video. I feel like I learned a lot, and it was just nice for me to see someone's unique autistic experience, especially a person who grew up in a country that is so different from the US, and they talked about that experience. Also, the experience of going from that country to another country that's different from the US, and talk about that experience. So it was just an intersection of a lot of different things. It got my brain juices flowing, and I really appreciate stuff like that when I'm able to see how someone's experience affected them, and then introspect on, you know, some of my own stuff, and just process it out loud with you guys. Make sure you guys go and support 𝗬𝗏𝗁's video. I will leave a link to his video in the description box below so you guys could go like and help out his algorithm too. I always like seeing his work that he does about the autistic experience, especially in correlation to Japan, because things like this is so necessary for people to start to speak on their experiences, document it, show how it's also different from each other, but also so similar. You know, there's a lot of universal struggles that we all go through that is just really interesting to see. And as well, it's just endlessly interesting to see how the autistic struggles in Japan may be different, and just the culture in Japan, how that interacts with being an autistic person, I think is really interesting to reflect on, because it is so different than living in a place like America and living in a place like the Netherlands. But other than that, make sure you guys answer all the questions I asked you throughout this video in the comment section down below, because I am genuinely curious to see what you guys have to say and what countries you're from, and how your autism specifically interacts with the social norms in your country. I know some of you guys don't like to interact and comment, because a lot of the times I get comments of people saying, I usually watch your videos and just don't comment. So please, if you're not doing it for yourself, at least do it for me. I want to get to know your guys' different experiences. I think it'll be so interesting for us to like read about it. It could be in a way like a forum. And I think it could be so weirdly cathartic and uniting in that way. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning in on today's video with me. Ooh, I'm gonna take these off really quick. I'll be sure to see you guys next week. Take care.